Sometimes, the deepest impact we leave on another soul isn't found in the words we spoke, but in the quiet moments when we chose to simply be there. There's something haunting about the realization that comes too late. It creeps in during those still hours between sleep and dawn, when the house settles into its ancient rhythms and memory becomes more real than the present moment. You find yourself wondering about the spaces between conversations, the pauses that stretched like bridges between two hearts, and the profound weight of what was never said. We spend so much of our lives believing that love is loud. That connection requires constant declaration. That to matter to someone, we must fill every silence with proof of our presence. But there's a deeper truth that reveals itself only when we've lived long enough to understand the architecture of human longing. Sometimes, the greatest gift we can offer another soul is our willingness to exist quietly beside them, without expectation, without agenda, without the need to solve or fix or change. Think about the people who shaped you most profoundly. Not the ones who shouted their love from mountaintops or showered you with grand gestures, but those who understood that presence itself is a form of prayer. The friend who sat with you in the hospital waiting room, saying nothing because there was nothing that needed to be said. The spouse who continued to bring you coffee exactly the way you liked it, long after the habit had become invisible. The parent who kept calling, even when you were too busy or too proud or too hurt to fully receive what they were offering. These souls understood something that our culture of constant communication has forgotten, that being truly seen doesn't require being constantly heard. That love often expresses itself most authentically in the spaces between words, in the decision to remain present when everything else in life demands our attention elsewhere. There's a particular quality to this kind of love that can't be manufactured or performed. It emerges from a deep understanding of what it means to be human, fragile, temporary, carrying invisible wounds that we rarely name. It's the love that doesn't try to fill the emptiness but rather acknowledges it with reverence, understanding that some voids are sacred, that some silence is holy. You were someone's quiet sanctuary, weren't you? Even if you never knew it. Even if no one ever told you. In a world that feels increasingly frantic, increasingly demanding, you became someone's place of rest. Your presence, not your words, not your advice, not your solutions, but simply the fact of your existence in their orbit, created a kind of peace that they carried with them long after you parted ways. The afternoon light filters through Venetian blinds in a way that transforms an ordinary living room into something almost cathedral-like. Dust particles dance in the golden streams, and for a moment, time feels suspended. This is the hour when memories arrive uninvited, when the boundary between past and present becomes porous, when we find ourselves inhabited by the ghosts of conversations that never happened and the echoes of silences we shared. She used to sit in that chair by the window, your grandmother, your mother, your friend, the one who taught you without meaning to that love could be quiet, steady, undemanding. She would fold laundry with practiced hands while you told her about your day, your dreams, your disappointments. She rarely offered solutions. She rarely interrupted. She simply listened. And in her listening, you found something you hadn't known you were searching for, the experience of being completely accepted, completely held, without having to perform or prove or earn your place in someone's heart. Years later, when grief comes to collect what time has borrowed, you realize that those afternoon conversations weren't really about the words exchanged. They were about the quality of attention she offered, the way her presence created a safe harbor in the storm of your becoming. She was a witness to your unfolding, a quiet guardian of your most tender truths. But here's what takes decades to understand. While you were receiving the gift of her silent companionship, you were simultaneously offering the same gift in return. Your presence in her life, your willingness to sit in that sunny room and share the ordinary details of your existence, gave her something precious too. You became her connection to the world's continuing story, her reminder that life moves forward even when her own world was growing smaller, quieter, more contained. This is the mysterious mathematics of human connection, how love multiplies rather than divides, how being truly present for someone automatically creates space for them to be present for you. Neither of you needed to announce this transaction. It happened in the realm beyond language, in the territory of the heart where the most important business of living takes place. The seasons changed outside that window. Spring gave way to summer, summer to fall, fall to the deep contemplation of winter. And through it all, there were these moments of communion that required nothing more than two souls agreeing to exist in the same space, at the same time, without the armor we usually wear in the world. She taught you, without ever speaking the lesson directly, that love isn't always about what we do for each other. Sometimes it's about what we don't do. We don't judge, we don't fix, we don't demand transformation or improvement. We simply offer the radical gift of acceptance, the profound generosity of allowing another person to be exactly who they are, in exactly this moment, without conditions or expectations. In the language of trees, there's a phenomenon called crown shyness, the way mature forest giants grow their branches just close enough to touch, but never overlap, creating a living cathedral of interconnected canopies that support each other without consuming each other. This is what you learned in that sunlit room, how to love someone with the wisdom of old trees, how to be close enough to offer support while maintaining the respectful distance that allows for individual growth and dignity. You became fluent in the dialect of comfortable silence, the rare language spoken only by souls who have learned to trust the spaces between words. You discovered that conversation doesn't always require speaking, that communication can happen in the shared rhythm of breathing, in the synchronicity of two people watching the same sky change color as evening approaches. There were afternoons when neither of you spoke for long stretches, content to exist in parallel solitude, each lost in your own thoughts but somehow thinking together. These weren't empty silences, they were full, rich, pregnant with understanding. They were the silences of deep friendship, of profound acceptance, of two hearts that had learned to beat in complementary rhythms. And when she was gone, when that chair by the window sat empty and the afternoon light revealed only dust and absence, you understood something about loss that no one can teach you directly, that grief isn't just about missing someone's words or actions or physical presence. It's about missing the particular quality of silence you shared, the specific frequency of peace that existed only when you were together in that wordless communion. But you also realized something else, something that transforms the nature of loss itself, that silence, once shared, becomes part of who you are. You carry it forward into every other relationship, every other quiet moment, every other opportunity to offer someone the gift of your undivided presence. The silence you learn to inhabit with her becomes the silence you offer to others, your children when they need someone to witness their struggles without trying to solve them, your spouse when they're processing grief or confusion or joy too large for words, your friends when they need someone to sit with them in the uncertainty that defines so much of human experience. This is how love travels through time, how wisdom passes from one generation to the next, how the quiet gifts we receive become the quiet gifts we give. You became someone's safe harbor because someone once created that sanctuary for you. You learned to offer presence without agenda because someone once offered you the same sacred gift. The mathematics of this exchange aren't visible on any ledger, can't be quantified or measured or proven. But they're real nonetheless, as real as the afternoon light that still streams through windows, as real as the continuing need for spaces where souls can rest without explanation or justification. And then comes the moment of recognition that changes everything, the phone call, the letter, the conversation with someone who knew her too, when you discover that you weren't the only recipient of her quiet ministry. That while you were sitting in comfortable silence together, while you thought you were simply receiving the gift of her presence, You were actually participating in something much larger and more mysterious. You learned that she spoke about those afternoons with you to others. Not in detail, she wasn't one to betray confidence or reduce sacred moments to casual conversation. But she mentioned, in her careful way, how much those times meant to her. How your presence had been a source of comfort during her own difficult seasons. How knowing that you would show up, that you would sit in that chair across from her and share the weight of simply being human, had given her strength to face things that felt too heavy to carry alone. This revelation arrives like lightning, illuminating a landscape you thought you knew completely but had only seen from one side. You had been so focused on what you were receiving, the peace, the acceptance, the sense of being held by someone who loved you without conditions, that you had missed the profound truth that you were simultaneously offering the same gift in return. She had been aging, as we all age, watching her world gradually contract. Friends were moving away or moving on. Her body was becoming less reliable, less predictable. The future, once so full of possibility, had narrowed to a more immediate horizon. But in the midst of all that transition and uncertainty, there was this, your presence, your willingness to show up, your gift of treating her not as someone diminished by age but as someone still fully alive, still worthy of time and attention and the simple pleasure of shared silence. You had become a reminder that she still mattered, that her life still held value not because of what she could do or provide, but simply because of who she was. Your presence said what words could never adequately express, that she was seen, that she was cherished, that she was not forgotten or overlooked or dismissed because of the number of years she had accumulated. This is the profound reciprocity that exists in all authentic connection, the way that being truly present for someone automatically creates space for them to be present for you. Neither person is the giver or the receiver, both are simultaneously offering and accepting the gift of witnessed existence. But the revelation goes deeper still. You realize that this exchange of quiet presence wasn't just happening between the two of you. It was part of a larger web of connection, a network of souls who had learned the art of loving through presence rather than performance. She had other people who mattered to her in this same way, and you had other relationships where this same quality of attention was both offered and received. You begin to understand that this is how healing moves through the world, not through grand gestures or dramatic interventions, but through the accumulation of small moments when someone chooses to be fully present with another soul. The afternoon you spent in comfortable silence while she folded laundry might have been the exact moment she needed to remember her own worth. The day you sat together without feeling compelled to fill the quiet with chatter might have been the day she felt less alone in facing whatever private struggle she was carrying. And conversely, her presence during your own seasons of difficulty, the way she created space for you to exist without explanation or justification, had given you something you carried forward into every other relationship. You had learned from her the profound generosity of allowing someone to be exactly who they are, in exactly this moment, without the pressure to be different or better or more than they currently are. This is how wisdom travels through generations, how love multiplies rather than depletes itself. The silence you shared with her becomes the silence you offered others. The acceptance you felt in her presence becomes the acceptance you extend to the people who cross your path carrying their own invisible burdens, their own unspoken fears, their own deep longing to be witnessed and held without judgment. You realize that every person you've ever loved this way, every soul to whom you've offered the gift of quiet presence, has been both teacher and student in this ancient art of loving through being rather than doing. The grandchild who climbs into your lap not for advice but simply for the comfort of being close. The friend who calls not because they need you to solve their problems but because they need someone to hear them think out loud. The spouse who sits beside you in the garden, both of you quiet, both of you somehow thinking together. Each of these moments is part of the same sacred practice, the decision to show up without agenda, to be present without trying to change or fix or improve the person you're with. It's the love that trusts in the healing power of witnessed existence, the profound therapy of being seen and accepted exactly as you are. This is your legacy, whether you recognize it or not. Not the things you've accomplished or accumulated, not the problems you've solved or the advice you've given, but the quality of presence you've offered to the souls who have crossed your path. The silence you've been willing to share, the space you've created for others to exist without performance or pretense. In the end, what remains isn't the conversations you remember but the feeling of being completely known by someone who loved you anyway. What echoes forward isn't the wisdom shared but the wisdom of knowing when to speak and when to simply be. The silence you were for someone becomes a living thing that they carry forward, a sanctuary they can return to in memory when the world becomes too demanding, too loud, too much. Tonight, as you move through your evening rituals, as you turn off lights and check doors and prepare for sleep, consider this: somewhere, someone is thinking about the peace they found in your presence. Someone is remembering the afternoon when you sat with them without trying to solve their sadness, the evening when you listened without offering corrections or improvements, the moment when your simple existence in their life felt like prayer. You have been someone's quiet miracle, the reminder that love doesn't always announce itself with trumpets and fanfare. Sometimes it arrives in work clothes and worn shoes, sits in the chair across from you, and offers the revolutionary gift of acceptance, complete, unconditional, requiring nothing in return except the privilege of sharing the same small space in an infinite universe. This is the silence you were for someone. This is the peace you offered without knowing you were offering it. This is the love that travels through time, that bridges the space between hearts, that reminds us all that we are seen, we are held, we are worthy of the simple gift of witnessed existence. The afternoon light still streams through windows somewhere, still transforms ordinary rooms into places of prayer. And in that light, the silence you shared continues to speak, continues to heal, continues to remind us all that presence itself is a form of love, that being fully here for someone is perhaps the most sacred gift we can offer in a world that too often feels absent, distracted, looking everywhere but at the soul that sits right in front of us, waiting to be seen. If these words found you where you needed to be found, if something in this reflection felt familiar or true or healing, you're not alone in recognizing the profound value of quiet presence. There are others who understand that love isn't always loud, that sometimes the most meaningful connections happen in the spaces between words. Share your own memories of sacred silence, of moments when someone's simple presence became your sanctuary, or when you discovered you had become that sanctuary for another soul.